Okay, I am going to go over just a couple of things that I noticed in your annotated bibliographies that it was a common some common problems because we got to get these citations correct for your references page. One of the biggest things that I noticed on the title page is a lot of you are starting your title at the very top, right underneath that header box. So what you're going to want to do is drop that down about 3 lines, or so. 3 to 4 would put it, in the upper quadrant still, and give you that space at the top. So you need to make sure that you include that. Also, make sure that all your fonts are the same. You're using the exact same font all the way through consistently, same size, same font type. A lot of y'all tend to forget that with your running header. You'll leave it because it defaults to Arial. You'll leave it as Arial, and then the fonts won't match for the rest of your for your thing. So that's the one thing that I've noticed really um, on the title page for the annotated. And we're going to use that same title page on our research essay, right? So we're just kind of taking that and dropping it in our document. So make sure that you get those right. The other thing is that I notice a lot of you aren't capitalizing, in you're only going to use capitalization, those capitalization adjustments when you are doing your articles. Your title of your paper should be capitalized properly. We're not going to capitalize preposition words or articles, but everything else should be capitalized there in your title. Okay, so on your references page, I'm just going to go over a couple of things just to remind you. Number one, you have to list your authors in alphabetical order. That does not change. Okay, so alphabetical order. If you do not have a author and you're using the date as the first line, because that's what happens next. So say this did not have an author, okay, and I'm just using the date as my reference point. I'm starting with starting my citation with the date. You're going to list those in numerical order by most recent first, and then you go from there. Okay, and those go at the very top. So if you think about it, like numbers come before the alphabet. So just think about that. You're going to put those first, and then you'll continue on with alphabetical order with your authors. So anything that you're using with no author for just the date will go on top, and you'll list those in numerical order by the most recent first, okay? And then you start your authors by by alphabetical order, okay? The other thing is I noticed, let me back out of all this. Oopsie. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oops. There we go. Well, there we go. The other thing that I noticed that is important is a lot of you are either using a citation machine, or you're using the suggested citation that's on your article. And let me tell you that, especially if your article is older, they are not, then that whenever that article was written, that was the citation for that time. And things change. So if you're using the citation machine, sometimes it can get it absolutely spot on correct, but I would not rely on a citation machine for your citations, period. Um, the errors alone that a lot of those machines create will cause a lot more problems than good. Okay. The suggested citation, APA, MLA, all of those formats are continually changing. They're updating all the time. The citation order that I gave you in that original document, my original annotated bibliography, is the current APA guidelines for citations. Okay, so those of you that are using those citations, you're going to see a lot of markup on your annotated bibliography. I just copied one from an annotated bibliography because I wanted to show you what doesn't go, what goes, and all that good stuff. Okay, this little phrase retrieved on the date from comes out. It doesn't stay in there. Okay, the correct order should be author last name, comma, first initial, or ever how many initials they have. If their name is Valerie Marie Puranic, it would be V period M period. Okay. If it has more than one author, the first author is listed reverse order like this. Then you would either use, if it's two authors, you would use an ampersand, and then you would use the author, the next author would be forward. It would be correct because um, it just gets confusing with the comma situation if you do it like that. So, but if you have three authors, it would be the same way. You would just use after your initial period, you would use a comma. You would type in the author's name like that in forward order with the second and third subsequent authors, and then you would use the ampersand and then then the name for the last one. Okay. All right. So let me back on out of this here. Okay. The other thing that I noticed in your annotated is a lot of you had the reverse of this. Um, this was italicized and this was straight, like straight text. That's the other way around. The article title is not italicized. Okay. The website title is italicized. That's current APA standards. I know it gets confusing. I know that that's a struggle, but like just fix that. Okay. Then delete that retrieve from date off because you don't need that for this for in current standards. Okay. The next thing is titles. So in APA, it tells us that only um, the first word and any proper nouns are capitalized. Okay, so women should be capitalized because it's the first word, and then everything else after that should be lowercase. Stereotypes they face for dyeing their hair. Okay, period. We're going to end it there. So make sure that you fix that for your works cited page. And I made all these notes on your anti-bibliography. I just felt like it needs to be something that needs to be discussed again too, so that you're just aware. Okay. The last thing is that a lot of your citations look like this. There would be this giant gap. Okay, there would be this giant gap here where you ended, and when you typed in your citation, it dropped it to 3 or 4 or 5 lines. Some of y'all even have longer than that. Okay, you got to fix that. You got to fix, you can't leave these big gaps in here. So, what you can do, what you should do, is the APA guidelines tell us that we don't need the HTTPS or those two forward slashes. You start with www. Okay, so I'm taking that off. Then what you want to do is kind of guesstimate about how much space that you have on that line. Okay, I'm guessing that about this far is about as far as I can go on that line before it, and I may be wrong because I can always readjust. What you want to do is find a space that, or find a place in that citation that is interjected by a piece of punctuation. So like a forward slash or a dash, and what you want to do is pick up after that, whatever that punctuation is. I'm going to guess that I'm about right here on on space. So I'm going to put my cursor in after the piece of punctuation. What you don't want to happen is to split something that doesn't have any natural gaps. Okay, there's no punctuation in this. I don't want to split this up and make half of it go on one line, half of it go on the other. Okay, so I'm just finding a natural piece of punctuation, and then if I hit the space bar, which I'm still a little short, so let me go back and readjust. Okay, and then that's about as close as I'm going to be able to get it, I think, without splitting it somewhere else. Okay, and so what that will do is it will give you a natural space. It like this is still a little bit of a space, but it's better than trying to split that number up where it doesn't have a natural break. Okay, then the whole thing we're going to indent over to 0.50. We're going to take that top line back to the left. Okay, your citation should end up looking like that. Okay, that's what it should look like. This needs to be fixed for capitalization. I'm just going to go ahead and fix it so it's correct. Here, I made it as a note, and I should have just fixed it while I was here. The absurd stereotypes, that's a lowercase a, that's a lowercase s, lowercase t. Now, if you had a colon in there, like some articles have a colon in as part of the title, you would capitalize the first word after the colon. Same with a dash. Same with, well, that's probably about it. Okay. So it would be the first word and then any proper nouns. And then if you had a piece of punctuation like a colon or a dash, it would be the next word after that would be capitalized as well. Because we're kind of treating it like kind of sentence form. Okay. So that's the correct citation. That's the way it should look. The last thing is the spacing. So a lot of you had it look like this, okay, in these giant gaps. You do not want that. You want there to be a single space. Now, it's not going to single all the way out. So even if I highlight it and I go in and I press single, it's not going to single it to the thing. But there should not be a gap. There should not be a giant gap. You may have a little bit larger gap than this, depending on how it falls, but there should not be these giant gaps in your paper. They should run right on top of each other. The last thing that I just want to reiterate is that you need to make sure that this paragraph is completely left aligned. If you indent it, what happens is it's going to run into that and it looks like it's part of the citation. And that's something that you don't want to do. So some of you swapped it around. You didn't indent the first line and indented all the subsequent lines. It just should all be left aligned. Okay? And I think that that's pretty much everything from our annotated bibliography that I wanted to kind of go over. So just to reiterate, uh, fix your titles. So for because this is important for your research paper, fix your titles. Capitalization, we're only capitalizing your proper nouns and that first word. Okay. If you don't have an author, you go by the date. Okay. The dates go in numerical order from most recent to the latest, or earliest, I guess I should say, goes reverse order before you start your alphabetical order with the author's last name, and then fix those gaps in your um, citations so that you don't have those giant gaps in your. And I can fix this one. You don't have giant gaps in your spacing. Okay.